Alright, so let's talk about Ember Souls from Virtual Age, but before getting into my review of the game, I did receive preview access and a game code from Meta and Virtual Age to create this review. I'll quickly give you a brief summary on my thoughts, is it worth it, move on to my full review, graphics comparison with Quest 2, 3, 3S, and close it out with my final thoughts. This video will also be chaptered, plus I'll leave a link down below pinned for you to get 10% off Ember Souls if you think about getting the game. And remember, I'm not here to convince you to get anything, and I'm just offering my opinion. I'll include spoilers throughout the video, as if you're going to get the game, the last thing you'll care about honestly is the story. The laundry list out of the way, let's actually talk about Ember Souls. From just taking a quick glimpse of the game, you can see, and the developers mention, being heavily inspired by games like Prince of Persia and Assassin's Creed. It's a blend of hack and slash gameplay with parkour, and puzzles here and there sparkle throughout. The best way to describe Ember Souls, after completing it, it feels very similar to one of the very first games I covered on this channel before, called Stride Fates by Joyway, which could be good or bad depending on who you ask. For me, it's kind of bad. Whether it's the concept or the layout of the game, it's very straightforward, and I wish they would increase the difficulty of certain puzzles late game. As playing in the hardest difficulty, the game was really easy for me, and they do include it in the settings if you want a more difficult experience. As compared to Asgard's Wrath 2 puzzles, this is a walk in the park. Who cares about walking on water when you can just instantly freeze the water and climb on it? As you familiar yourself with the game's mechanics, you piece 1 and 2 together. When you explore the environments, there is a bit of player autonomy to do your own thing. When you take another path, it'll reward you with extra consumables or potions. However, it is a very linear experience, with breaking vases throughout the game to get coins, which could unlock certain weapons and other things for your inventory. As throughout this story, a portal shows up to go back to the place and customize your inventory or upgrade certain skills or unlock new abilities. And in the center, you have a pouch to carry items and consumables, and some of them are extremely OP, like this invincibility potion. Although one aspect that is incredibly annoying is your weapons inventory while doing parkour. It's incredibly janky and dubious. I almost pulled out my hair, but I remembered I shaved myself bald the other day. In Ember Souls, there's elements that generally had me intrigued through, and you can tell the developers did put some soul into the game, no pun intended, even if it's very minimal. I never played Prince of Persia, I've seen people talk about it and seen some gameplay, but you can tell it takes a lot of inspiration from the franchise. But in terms of an actual good single player campaign, is where this game falls extremely short. In all honesty, this feels like an early access title even at release. 3 or 4 months ago when I first saw the trailer for this game, it's something I've been looking forward to playing. The aesthetic is right up my alley, and this game is a bit of a disappointment as it's filled with jank and tons of game-breaking bugs, including that there's tons of moments where you just clip inside of the walls or you'll grip certain objects just for you to fall to your death. One thing that annoyed me a ton is if you fall from a certain high point, it'll make you respawn in a location at your last checkpoint. I'm used to jank as I've played a bunch of Boner Lab and Sorcery and Blade early on, but to be honest, this feels very reminiscent to early VR games in terms of what you can actually do in game. It's Asgard's Wrath 2 at home, but the reason why I compare it to Stride Fates more than any game available on Quest is that it uses a bunch of AI art for a large portion of the campaign, and it has embarrassingly bad AI dialogue. Take a listen.
I don't know how you've survived this long with how stupid and weak you are.
Your duty was to guard the Ember Stones, not allow yourself to be corrupted by them.
This will be your last impertinence. Your embers will feed my stone.
But the biggest issue with AI in video games is the implementation. It's always more or so feels like a crutch to what could have been better without it. For me, games are more than just 3D visuals to burn extra time. It's an art form, and the campaign story is as dense as me when I finish eating 6 tacos in one sitting. It has an underlying serious tone with people telling you traumatizing stories, but I honestly laugh throughout any of the dialogue interactions. Ember Souls takes the cake from Stride Fates in how bad the writing is, and I can confidently say that at no point that I feel engaged with the story. And if you were able to write the most cliche ending and start to a story, this is what you get. When the NPCs or characters talk to you, it's like watching a foreign film with English subtitles, but the sub completely butchers its translation. And the most egregious part is that it uses the same AI voice that AI content farms on YouTube use. Take a listen.
Everything changed. The fanatics came, forcing men to join the shadow cult or die. I watched my brother kneel to them, while my father fought back and was burned alive for defying them.
And the overarching story is just to retrieve 4 elemental stones and defeat the mysterious Shadow Sultan. There are a few boss fights in the game, it's a total of 5, and in each fight you'll get 1 stone. And you guessed it, you plan to take on the final boss at the very end. And even in the hardest difficulty, the boss fights are extremely underwhelming. I only died once to a boss because of a misinput for drinking an invisibility potion. And because this game is so janky, you could pretty much cheese anything, including the last boss fight, which was the most underwhelming from the bunch. I managed to hit him all the way to the corner of the map, and it was pretty much GG's. The title being Ember Souls, I was kind of expecting a Dark Souls type of experience, and no, this isn't anything of that. As before encountering each boss, your playthrough will consist of spanning across 15 different levels and 5 different environments. Before encountering each boss, your playthrough will consist of spanning across 15 different levels and 5 different environments, as the visuals for a standalone title aren't that bad with Quest 3, where I completed my entire playthrough. Even on Quest 2, it doesn't look bad, it just runs at the default eye buffer resolution. What's interesting and positive is that it does include a bit of graphical settings, which is great to see, but I'll touch on that more a bit later when I include a side-by-side visual of Quest 2 against Quest 3 3S. On another note, enemy variety is also a bit underwhelming, as when you approach the 1 hour mark, you've pretty much seen it all until the I am Groot looking character comes into play. Including that when you enter new areas, you always get the same enemy waves to the point where it becomes boring, as the enemy AI isn't anything special. You can get silent behind the back takedowns, but even if you miss, they won't notice. Like, honestly, it's pretty crazy. We've come full circle using AI for voiceovers, but the AI for enemies is back in the Stone Ages. Ember Souls isn't that good of a title if you compare it to other VR roguelites or arenas, unfortunately. I don't love being so harsh to video games, especially in VR, as I know how hard and consuming it can be, but this just isn't it. I finished the entire campaign in the hardest difficulty, and keep in mind it took me around 5 hours to 6 hours to fully complete. And it also includes other modes called Raids, which is a roguelike mode, and Sandbox. This through and through is basically Stride Fates with a Persian Palace theme. To give credit to Stride Fates, Ember Souls has way more bugs and glitches, including that one of the worst gameplay mechanics included is swimming in VR. Like, I mean, who thought of this? It's just incredibly awkward, and because of how poorly it's implemented, you'll clip inside the walls, and it almost made me turn off the game. Now let's talk about graphics and performance on Quest 2 3S, including that this title has certain graphical settings for you to change. This first example I only captured on Quest 3, but you can also do it on Quest 2, as it includes different types of settings ranging from super sampling that helps with aliasing, rendering the frame at a higher resolution, then scaling down to the headset's display. But super sampling is super performance heavy, as it samples every pixel on screen, smoothing out polygons, improving aliasing. Other options include TAA, which is post-process anti-aliasing that uses past frames to clean up aliasing, but it introduces a weird blur when you're obviously moving. 2 options of multi-sample anti-aliasing, 2-sample and 4-sample, less performance heavy than super sampling, as it only helps when aliasing on an edge becomes an issue. When booting up the game, these are the base settings on Quest 2 and these are the base settings on Quest 3, different settings on older hardware. But you can also change them and alter them yourself. Although it's best to leave it at the default settings unless you're targeting something specific, including settings like not removing dead enemies I found to be extremely taxing during combat. But Ember Souls on Quest 2 and Quest 3, if you do increase the super sampling, it settles at Meta's default eye buffer resolution scale target. Nothing major, as it's still targeting Quest 2, but I imagine optimization for this game should still be on the table if they continue to update it or include new content. The title visually on Quest 3 and even Quest 2 doesn't look half as bad. At the start of the game, I was impressed genuinely, though once you get into the game, that's when things start to fall apart. There aren't any dynamic shadows, which is kind of expected with Quest. All of the lighting is done with shaders, as certain areas look brightly lit and others look dark texture-wise. Nothing stands out particularly, it's still a Quest title at the core, but I love that they included certain graphical settings depending on what you like to prioritize over the others. It's slightly better than just increasing the resolution with Quest Games Optimizer, and I would love if other titles follow suit. Maybe they add higher options just so for in the future when we do get newer hardware, and because everything is backwards compatible, it does work and looks pretty good in the future. All that to say, is Ember Souls worth getting and spending $25 for? It depends, like I said in the beginning of the video. There's a reason why the game is priced just below $30. The studio that worked on this title, Virtual Age, is the same studio behind Frontline Guardians. If I remember, I think I purchased the game but never got time to actually check it out. For Ember Souls, I would gladly pay $10 to $15 for it, but $25, like I said, it's a hard sell. Its format is a bit outdated with Behemoth right around the corner. Maybe save your money until then. VR titles are still relatively inexpensive. $25 isn't much, but if it was $60, you bet I'll have my pitchfork out. This title feels like something in early access working to a full release. The foundation to turning an okay game to a great game is there. I just think the direction they took was the wrong approach. In the beginning, I was starstruck when the game's opening scene is this beautiful. Then this dude talks. That's kind of the same feeling I had playing the game. Just kind of disappointment. And to close it off, I don't recommend Ember Souls. To end the video, like always, that's my full review of Ember Souls. It does have a mixed reality mode, but it'll be available in the future. I still can't access it. Maybe I'll try that out, or hopefully, since this title is on Quest 2, maybe we get a Quest 3 upgrade entering next year. Leave a like or dislike, subscribe for similar VR content and ramblings from me. I keep on saying this, but hopefully I fully review Batman. I have nearly 300 gigabytes worth of recordings, plus observations at large, what it means for VR and the industry. Lots of discuss as the general hype has settled now. Alright, look, I'm yapping again. Until the next video, see ya.